Chloe Weber, it's a pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
So today I want to begin with something you told me offline a minute ago, and that is a belief of yours that Eastern medicine and particularly traditional Chinese medicine can stack up very favorably, if not superiorly, to Western medicine in most non-emergency situations.
Damn straight. That's been my clinical experience, at least. I can certainly speak to that. Obviously, everybody's situation is different. Everybody needs to find the right practitioner for what they're going through and for their own personal healing journey. But from what I have seen, that Chinese medicine is something that I use particularly for public health intervention. So the idea is to create proactive health as opposed to reactive health. And even when you have a disease state or a pattern of disharmony, which is sort of what we call it in Chinese medicine has so much nuance and individualization that I see that it works more effectively and more safely in terms of addressing the root causes of disharmony and helping people reestablish health. So that's what I see over and over and over again, though I'm sure that would be highly debated.
There's a lot to unpack there. I like that you mentioned disharmony and also that you said root causes and not just cause, because very rarely is there just one thing that's the root. And if you address multiple things and you work on building overall health, you tend to knock out a bunch of the different root causes at the same time.
Exactly. It's sort of like germ theory versus terrain theory. Like with Chinese medicine, we're looking at the overall functioning of the body and the mind and how everything's working together as a coherent and cohesive unit, as opposed to in Western medicine, a lot of times you're just looking for this one end marker or trying to get rid of this one bacteria, as opposed to, how is the gut functioning that's allowing this bacteria to propagate, So it's really much more subtle and much more dynamic than Western medicine.
Well, you've nicely set up the rest of today's conversation about preventative medicine and TCM and a lot of these topics. But before we get started, what are the unusual or non-negotiables that you've done for your health, performance, and bioharmony so far today?
So far today, let's see. I brain tapped this morning, which is one of my favorite of my gadgets, and I have quite a few gadgets. So shout out to Dr. Porter. He's one of my favorite humans. Really, really wonderful tech and really accessible to use daily and to get, even if you're just getting the meditations without the headset. So it is a headset that has an eye visor over it, and it shoots different lights in your ears and over your eyes. So it's sort of like brain entrainment paired with binaural beats and then some slight hypnosis type meditations. There are all sorts of different ones on there, but I think it's fantastic. And I've been trained as a neurofeedback practitioner. I love neurofeedback, but this is just something that's so easy to do at home. So I love that. It helps work on the subconscious and getting rid of some of those adverse beliefs that we all carry around. But so the brain tap's definitely one of them. This morning, I had my coffee like I do every morning as a born and bred New Yorker with collagen and with our golden ticket Chinese herbs in there, which is my favorite. So that has like reishi and astragalus to boost the immune system, some cinnamon, a bunch of really wonderful adaptogenic herbs that taste so good. Well, really just like finding some time and space for joy with my son before getting him on the bus. It's such a stressful time. I cook everything for my son from scratch. So getting him his lunch and his breakfast and getting him dressed and getting him on the school bus all before it gets a little bit hectic most mornings. So it's like, you just got to stop for a minute and be like, let's have a 30-second party and then get him on the bus and run him away.
Yeah, that's a lot, especially at the same time running your company, RadicalRoots.
You just do what you can in a day and keep giving yourself the grace of imperfection is my lesson.
Yeah, I love those. Well, give us some background on how you got to where you are today and what it is that you do.
How I got to where I am today. What a winding tale. I suppose it goes back to when I was in high school. I ended up getting a rare tropical disease called cutaneous leishmaniasis. I was in Costa Rica hiking and whitewater rafting. That sort of led me, that was a parasitic disease that I came back and ended up on a first name basis with the CDC and ended up on a chemotherapy to kill that. So it was very impactful in my life in terms of like my development and who I became as a person and who I am as a person. But it also made me start looking at how our impacts on the environment are causing diseases to spread worldwide and how that's impacting our health and wellness, since this was a parasitic disorder that had never been found in Costa Rica where I was hiking. So that was really due to some of the environmental shifts that were going on in the rainforest down there. So then, flash forward a couple of years, I ended up studying ecology and evolutionary biology in college, and then ultimately was looking to do public health and fell into Chinese medicine. I'd done acupuncture a couple of times for quitting smoking cigarettes and for allergies, and just fell in love with the idea of using Chinese herbs for proactive medicine, because it's really just such a dynamic and beautiful system that's been used for thousands of years. And from what I've seen, there's truly nothing like it. So I went to school for Chinese medicine and came out and opened my dream business, which is called Urban Herbs. And, it's a nonprofit sliding scale Chinese herb clinic, or it was, in the hood in Denver. And at that time, I had my son, Remy, who is almost 9 now. And Remy was diagnosed at 2.5 with a super rare genetic disorder called STXBP1. As I always joke, you're screwed when your child's genetic condition is just named after the gene that's mutated, because that means that it's super duper rare. Remy is first and foremost the happiest human that I've ever met. He is the greatest teacher that I ever could have hoped for. And he is just such a joy and such a gift. But he has many, many challenges, including intractable epilepsy, Parkinsonian-like tremors, ataxia, apraxia, global cognitive and physical delays, probably other things, who knows. But he is such a wonderful spirit. He works so, so hard, and we've been on such a wild ride. But basically, when it came to the seizures, that was something that, knowing that he already had all of these cognitive delays, I really didn't want to put him on Western farms that could potentially further decrease his cognitive function and cause other complications. So that's when I started looking into hemp. And then as an herbalist, I sort of decided that, hemp was used in a very unilateral way. It's just sort of being used as like a one-off herb. And in Chinese medicine, we combine multiple herbs together to create really dynamic formulas that address, as we were saying, not only the what we call the branch, the symptoms, but addresses the root. So finally, I sort of stopped my feet for a little while and then created RadicalRoots so that I could make him his own formula. So it's been an interesting ride. I'm sort of just trying to go and see where this universe is directing me and help in any way that I can with other people.
Yeah. Does traditional Chinese medicine usually use full spectrum hemp in their formulations, or is that like your own creation?
Hemp actually is in our pharmacopoeia and has been used back thousands of years in Chinese herbal medicine. It wasn't used, it's not used in China today. I think that they're opening up some of the laws. I haven't looked into it in a while. China's a little bit interesting. But I know that there's a lot of hemp being grown in China, actually, interestingly enough. But yeah, it was traditionally used in China. We were one of the first companies to combine Chinese herbs with hemp in the way that we're doing it. And I don't know of any company that's doing it with the quality of herbs and the integrity of the herbs and the extraction method and all of that we're doing. I'm pretty psychotic about our standards.
Which is really important because a lot of the ingredients, the herbals, they are bioremediants. So if they're grown in bad soil, contaminated with heavy metals and mycotoxins and other things, it's sucking that up and then we're ingesting that. So it's really important to get that right, especially with herbals.
Well, and especially with hemp, it's a bioaccumulator. So what it does is it pulls up all of those toxins from the environment, which is fantastic because it actually helps potentiate topsoil, which is going to help combat global warming. And it's just a beautiful plant for so many incredible reasons. But, as everybody's seen, there's such a mass craze and mass trend towards hemp products. And the products out there are just straight crap. I'm sure that there are some good ones. I'm happy to name some other companies I respect. I often do. But out there, largely, there's a lot of companies that are just cutting corners, just getting mass produced, really poorly grown hemp. Whereas like with us, we use a farmer who uses close to no-till farming techniques to make sure that like not only are we respecting the people who are ingesting the herbs that we're giving them, but that we're helping hopefully create a healthier environment for our families and friends to live in as well, you know?
Yeah. One of the things about a lot of these old systems of medicine, whether it's TCM or Ayurveda or one of the other disciplines, is that they're very prevention focused. And today, it's like a much less attractive topic. It's much cooler to have a pill that automatically makes your symptoms go away. So, why do you focus on preventative medicine? And are there any ways of making it sexier?
Sexier. Chinese. I mean, I think Chinese herbs are super sexy. I don't know. I love them. They make me so happy. I think, I mean, we're all busy. Like everybody's super stressed out. Everybody's tapped out beyond the limit. You know, it's the society that we're in is just a little, I always say, like, you know, our nervous systems were built for fight or flight when the bear comes around every couple months, you know, but we're in fight or flight every time our phone is dinging or whatever's happening, you know, like, or anytime you turn on the television, if you still do that, you know, our nervous systems aren't really built for this environment. People are already at their limit. So I think that like the thought of being proactive about your health can be so overwhelming. Like a lot of times with patients, I'll talk to them about changing their diet and the looks of pure terror that comes on their faces is just, you know, which I totally understand. Like when I was told, I remember I was in Chinese medicine school, my teacher kept talking about gluten and gluten and gluten and gluten. And I was like, oh, yeah, my stomach's been a little wonky. So I went and got food allergy tested with him. And I went into class and he told me I was allergic to gluten. And I straight up started crying. I mean, I'm from Brooklyn. I grew up on pizza and bagels. Like, I was like, what do you do? And so I fully get it. But, you know, to me, it's really, if you can make small, sustainable steps every day in little ways that make sense for you and that you can build into your infrastructure of how you do your day and how you make your coffee, you know, like that's why I started the coffee herbs. Because at that time, I was in a place where like I was just so depleted, so stressed out, trying to figure out ways to support Remy. And I realized I wasn't taking my herbs regularly. And I was like, well, I know I'm going to drink my coffee every day. So why don't I make a formula that I can add to my coffee? That way I know I'm getting my herbs. It's going to be really tasty. And then, you know, that's one habit I can start adding on. You know, like I recently listened to Mel Brooks's like high five yourself in the mirror thing, which I thought was really silly, but I sort of absolutely adore Mel. So now I've started high-fiving, you know, like it's like you can add these little tiny things to your day that are really preventative health measures, whether it's helping your mental health or your physical health. So these little things really do add up. I think a lot of times we get carried away with the overwhelming task of like taking control of our health and really changing things 100%, whereas really the goal is just to like find the little things and chip away and just keep imperfectly moving in the direction of health and happiness.
I love the idea of habit stacking and attaching a desired new behavior to something that you're already doing. Maybe that's taking your herbs in your coffee or right next to your coffee, because I too have actually recently been really bad about taking my herbs that I usually take in the afternoon. But if I had something to stack it to, a habit that I already do I can just tack it on the end of, it'd be much easier.
It makes so much sense. And that's what I used to do with Remy. Like, so with Rem, we've gone to every doctor all over the place. I used to take him to neurologists down in Ecuador. We've been everywhere. But a lot of the things that I'd have to do with him were different. You know, I'd have him smell different things to activate and strengthen the limbic part of his brain, or have him do sensory things or whatnot. So it would be every time I'd change his clothes, I would do the sensory brushing and the smells, or like every time he'd sit down at his high table, like I do, you know, smells or, you know, binaural beats or whatever it was. And it just helps so much instead of just being like, okay, I've got to do all of these many things throughout the day. It's just like, all right, so if he's here, then we just add these things on.
I don't know if the ancient sciences like TCM and Ayurveda talk about it at all, but if I think through the senses, it seems that we heavily use our vision and we basically neglect the other of our senses. And it sounds like what you're doing with him is, in a way, bringing up the other senses and giving them equal opportunity to grow, because I'm sure they transmit and convey information.
Vision correlates to a massive part of our brain. So that's really important in terms of like neurodevelopment. But like smells, as I was saying, are deeply tied to like the limbic brain. So like emotional regulation. That's something that you'll see will go away very quickly in Alzheimer's. That's one of the tests that they'll do, is to see how somebody's smell has changed. So that's something that I always often recommend for people to do, especially with their kids as they're young, or, you know, as you're getting older. But like even movement, like with Remy, we had to do a lot of like cross crawl movements. I had him crawling and army crawling like miles a day. You know, like I refused to put him in like a walker or a stander or anything. I was like, he's going to crawl until he's neurologically ready to walk. And he crawled until he was 6 years old. And then I got him walking. And when he started walking, he did not fall and hurt his head, which I was terrified about, but because he was actually ready for it, you know, because he had done so much work strengthening his brain through that cross crawl action. So a lot of these things are sort of ignored now, but like the brain body connection, the brain smell connection, and even taste, like with Chinese herbs, we talk about the different tastes of the herbs a lot and where you feel those herbs on your tongue, those different tastes. And so traditionally, obviously, we decoct our herbs in water. So then you have to drink it. And most people are not very happy about this. I rarely do it, to be honest. But there is something about actually tasting it. You know, it sends a signal to the brain, sends a signal to the body to start creating bile or to start making certain enzymes. So the taste is important. But a lot of times we just bypass that with capsules.
That's actually something I've been thinking about in my pre-workout. One of the things I was adding for a while was beetroot. Is supposed to increase a molecule called nitric oxide, but it doesn't work nearly as well in supplement form as it does when you actually eat beets or arugula or any of these other precursor foods, because you're not getting the taste and it's not lingering in the mouth the same way.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It always blows me away. I mean, I remember being in school for Chinese medicine, just being totally floored how many times I would read a research study that would come out that would be like, you know, this liver enzyme that goes to the eyes does this and this. And you'd be like, well, how did Chinese medicine know 4,000 years ago that the liver opens to the eyes and does this and da da da? And you'd be like, it's mind blowing to see how accurate they were in understanding the complexities of the body and how sort of simply they were able to explain it in their terminology of the day. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I forget who said it, but there's a quote that to a well-trained doctor, the iris and the retina are like the poor man's MRI.
Well, in Chinese medicine, we look at different microsystems within the body. So like I'm sure most people have heard of like foot reflexology. Like that's considered like a microsystem. You can see the whole body on the foot. A lot of what I do is like ear acupuncture. So the ear is a microsystem. So a lot of times you can look at somebody's ear and be like, oh, you have back pain. Oh, you have high blood pressure. Oh, this and this is going on. And it's really easy to do. Or obviously, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I assume people know this, but I probably shouldn't make that assumption. We do a lot of diagnosis by looking at people's tongues. So we're able to really see what's going on with your health based on how your tongue, the coat of your tongue, the shape of your tongue, the thickness of your tongue, all of that. It makes people very self-conscious, but it's very helpful for us.
I've used acupressure around like my neck for migraines, and like there's ways of like opening the sinus cavity just by applying pressure, and like it's to pressure like certain parts of your foot, the reflexology. It's mind-blowing that actually works, and I was very skeptical at first, and it's not quite the same as like popping a Sudafed or something, but it can actually make quite a big difference.
Oh yeah, no, it's amazing. And I mean, acupuncture blows me away. It's always been sort of like my secondary modality. Most practitioners in the States focus on acupuncture. In China, herbal medicine is really considered to be sort of the backbone of the medicine. But in the States, it really hasn't caught on. So that's sort of been my big passion, is to make Chinese herbal medicine more accessible. It's just brilliant. But acupuncture, a good acupuncturist, blows me away every day. I mean, and there's so many of them are just fantastic in like Qigong. But yeah, there's so many different ways that you can just do acupressure on yourself.
Yeah. One of the core principles behind effective preventative medicine is to understand what's going on in and around your own body. Are there any like diagnostics you like to do to help people check in and make sure everything is running okay? Because a lot of times disease doesn't just crop up overnight. There's like telltale signs. They're long in advance that we might not realize are there.
Some of the main ones that I always talk to patients about are obviously digestion. And this is always like the fun one with patients because you just watch their like faces turn like terrified. But like, you should be pooping at least once a day. It should be sort of banana shaped. You should not see unprocessed food in there, unless you're eating like corn or something. Shouldn't be difficult to pass. It shouldn't be little small balls. It shouldn't be super loose, and just all of those things. Of course, that's going to happen from time to time, but those are just indications of how your digestion is functioning. If your digestion is not functioning well, that's an indication that you have inflammation in your gut, which could be due to a whole host of things, but likely some sort of food allergy, likely some sort of immune dysregulation within the gut, likely going to lead to leaky gut, likely going to lead to systemic inflammation. So really the gut is the heart of health and wellness. And so to me, that is ultimately the most important thing for everybody to optimize, especially, even when we're talking about brain health. The gut-brain axis is something that Chinese medicine has been talking about for thousands of years. Western medicine, once again, is finally catching up, which is lovely. Our formula, middle management, was based off of this formula, Buzhong Yiqi, which was created in 400 AD-ish by a classical herbalist, and it's traditionally used for digestive dysfunction, energy, and cognitive health. And it's just because it all goes well together, and it's so essential. Another thing that is really, really important is for women to look at their cycles. Super easy to tell how a woman's health is doing by their cycle. It should be about 28 days if it's longer or shorter. That means different things. It should last a couple of days, 3 or 4 days, should not have massive clots. There should not be a lot of cramping. If there are cramps before your period versus the first day of your period versus after your period, those all mean different things in Chinese medicine. You're having abnormal periods, which almost every woman I know does, myself included. Like, it's just great to go and get a practitioner to work with. We are fantastic at regulating women's cycles and helping with fertility and all of that. It's really something that Chinese medicine excels at, and also pain management as well. Tons of research on both of those things from the Western perspective. But those are two of the main things that I would look at. Obviously, you want to optimize your sleep as well and just make sure that that's functioning well. But digestion, number one, and women's cycle, number two, for sure.
Sure. We'll cover both of those, and I'm not very qualified to speak on the latter, but when you said that someone like you, someone who's steeped in traditional Chinese medicine, they can help regulate that. Is it a cosmetic and like thing that affects the way you feel, or is it actually like addressing something below the surface that's important to address?
Oh, no, it's addressing something that's important to address. I mean, if your hormones are off, then that's going to impact every aspect of your life. It's going to impact how your brain's functioning. It's going to impact your fight or flight response. Any woman or anybody in a relationship with a woman can attest that there are some significant hormonal fluctuations that happen with the menstrual cycle in some women. Those are indications that your hormones are not optimally balanced. And so by regulating those, you're going to have a smoother cycle, and that's just going to indicate that your body is functioning better and that the hormones are more balanced. And those hormones are really important to have in balance, because having them out of balance can lead to all sorts of things like estrogen dominant cancers and other stuff. Not in any way fear mongering. I'm just saying that, like, you want to have your hormones regulated because you're going to feel better in every way, shape, or form if you're a woman.
Yeah. And it's actually a good thing to do that. I always assumed that during different parts of the cycle, it was good to have the hormonal fluctuations. It was like the way things are supposed to be.
Yeah, no, you're supposed to have the hormonal fluctuation. So actually, as a practitioner, what we typically do is so say I was treating somebody for infertility, or actually, technically, I cannot say that I treat any Western diagnoses. So I'm not treating anybody for infertility. I have a patient who is looking to get pregnant and their cycle is a little bit wonky. What I would do would be give them herbs to sort of build up their system, build up their blood, their qi, their yin, over the first couple of weeks of their cycle, week 1 and 2. Then I might shift and do some herbs that are a little bit more moving. So those herbs are all supporting the natural flow of our cycle, but they're actually supporting the hormonal shifts of women as they go through their month. Because men sort of have a daily 24-hour cycle, women have a 28-day cycle.
That makes sense. Okay. And then back towards digestion. I feel like that's a really common one these days. Pretty much everyone has some form of digestive dysregulation. When you see that in your practice, do you recommend an elimination diet or a rotation diet or some kind of way of figuring out what those food sensitivities are?
Yeah. It is, as I said, one of the hardest things to get people to change. And there's so many reasons for that. A lot of that is cultural and like the connection to your family. You know, back in New York, I had a lot of Italian families who were like, I can't give up gluten. My grandma. Typically what I ask people to start with is to stop eating gluten and dairy at least for like 2 weeks to a month and just see how they feel. And I always started off, I'm like, look, if at the end of the month you don't notice anything different, awesome. Then you can go back to eating them. And if you do, then ideally you'll feel better enough that it's worthwhile for you to make substitutions for these foods and you'll adjust. You know, those are the two big ones that I see most commonly. So I feel like that's an easy way to sort of get people a dramatic shift pretty quickly. The other big ones are obviously corn, soy, eggs. I feel like I'm missing one. Corn, soy, eggs, gluten, dairy. Those are the big 5, I would say. So if you can get somebody to knock out all 5 of those for a month and then just sort of introduce them each once a week, you know, like, so start with like, you know, whatever you love the most. You're like, I need my cheese, start with some cheese. If you're not running to the bathroom or having like a lot of gas or whatever, cool, great, congratulations. I wish I could eat cheese. But, you know, just add them back in one by one. But I mean, there's so much research on, you know, even children with ADHD. There was a research study that showed that an elimination diet actually worked as well as the pharmaceuticals that were being prescribed. So diet really does make such a huge difference. So that's normally how I have people approach it and sort of try and keep it as down to earth and as compassionate as possible. People are still having issues. I might have them do gut tests or allergy tests. I am a believer in the parasite issues. My son only has seizures most of the time with the full moon, which is often a parasite connection. So my ex-husband used to work as a paramedic in New York, and they would always talk about how the emergency rooms would be jam-packed with the full moon. And then it's also lunacy, right? So it's the moon. So what happens is actually the moon is deeply tied with the movements of the parasites within our body. So as the moon is full, parasites migrate to different parts of your gut to lay eggs. Yay, it's so disgusting. And that migration leads to an increase in inflammation in the gut. That inflammation can travel along the vagus nerve, affect how the brain is functioning. So for somebody like my son who's wired to have seizures, that leads to seizures for him. For somebody else who, you know, might just be sort of have a penchant for depression or anxiety, might have more trouble sleeping. But if you notice that your symptoms, whatever they may be, whether they're like allergies, skin stuff or whatever, or digestive stuff, are flaring up around the full moon, I would recommend some sort of a parasite cleanse.
Yeah, and those can be eye-opening in not the most pleasant of ways.
Yep, they're horrible. But but better out than in. So
yeah, and it's also better to understand and correct a pattern you're seeing like that if it exists.
Exactly. Well, and it's, you know, again, it's like a little bit of discomfort for a lot of long-term gain. And like also the more that you start to be aware of these signs and symptoms within your body and like know like, oh, well, that's actually a little bit off from what it has been. Like, what's been happening? Did I change something? Was I exposed to something? You know, like once you're more able to sort of be aware of the things that are going on in your body, it means that you're able to respond more quickly and more efficiently.
Yeah. Does the moon trigger, a full moon trigger other growth in your body, such as other infections or like mold or candida or SIBO of any kind?
I would assume it affects pretty much all of the bacteria in our body. I definitely have heard of it affecting candida. I will say that our middle management, that is, it's a great formula. So that one was based off of that classical formula. But what I did was I added herbs like huosheng, which is actually patchouli, which is strongly antiviral. But it's been researched to break down biofilm and kill candida. And then some other antiviral herbs that go specifically to the gut. So it's an interesting formula because it actually does really kill off a lot of the pathogenic factors in the gut. That was really the goal with it. I bumped it up a little harder than the typical Chinese herbal formula for GI stuff. But that's because clinically what I see so often is dysbiosis and candida. And I wanted to make sure that it was strong enough to actually address those.
Yeah. And biofilms are incredibly difficult to kill off too.
Very difficult to kill off. It's always interesting. I had like 2 or 3 people email and be like, I think there's mold in the herbs in the middle management. I'm having like a mold flare up. And this was like right when we released it. And I was like, no, I have all the labs. Like every single herb in every single formula in every batch is tested. Like there's definitely no mold in it. And then I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It's breaking down the biofilm, which is blocking off some of the mold in the gut. So I was like, take some more activated charcoal, drink some water, slow it down. So I normally give people that caveat. Like if you are having sort of a Herxheimer response or any sort of an adverse reaction when you're taking the middle management, just slow it down. Take some charcoal or some zeolites or whatever binder pickles your fancy.
Will you explain what that is? What biofilms are? Because I don't think I've ever covered that on this show.
Biofilms are sort of these fun little mucus films that our bodies create in our gut to sort of wall off some of the toxins that we have, whether it's mold or heavy metals. So it's a protective measure of our immune system, but they sort of like wall off these things within our gut and then just keep things from functioning optimally. So the idea is we want to break those down so we can get those pathogens out of our body as opposed to just sort of having them stored to the side.
Yeah. And I think they also exist in other cavities and passages such as the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're traditionally very difficult to eradicate. So if you find something that works against them, you want to make sure that you're using it appropriately and for long enough so that you can actually get rid of the infection as a whole.
Exactly. Because you don't want to just break down the biofilm. You want to clear out the pathogens that are within there. So that's why I like pairing middle management with something that's going to bind to a heavy metal or a mold and help pull it out. And obviously, if you can pair that with like some sauna or some other detoxification pathways, the more the better. The more the merrier.
What are some of the universal concepts or things from Chinese medicine that you feel would be helpful for people to know, Chloe?
Everything. I mean, genuinely, it's interesting studying Chinese medicine because it's one of those things where you study and you study, and then one day your entire world is different because you just look at everything through a completely different lens and your world will never be the same again. So it's hard to narrow it down because it really is just such a brilliant perspective on the body and the world. They really look at the body as a microcosm of the macrocosm. I think that that's a very important way to look at us. The more that we can take care of ourselves, the more of an impact it has on, our families, our communities, and the world at large, especially in times like these where it can feel so overwhelming in terms of the dramatic shifts that we need to see in society today. If you bring it back to caring for yourself and loving those in your circle and, expanding those circles, I think that that's really important to remember. I'm personally consider myself a Taoist. I've read the Tao and followed the Tao since I was in high school. I think that it is one of the most beautiful and profound books on how to live your life and sort of how to follow the path that is ahead of you and to trust that the universe is there to guide you. It's been something that's been really, really helpful for me. And then another thing that I think is just so, so powerful, especially in these times where there's so much divisiveness, is the concept of the middle way. Especially as biohackers, a lot of us get really amped on like, we're going to do this. I'm going to work out here. I'm going to cold plunge, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do 500 different things and take 200 supplements a day. There's more to life than self-care, like there's more to any conversation than one side, like no matter what side you're on. I know to me, like personally, like politically, like there's the left, there's the right, like everything seems like there's a lot of space in the middle there that seems a little bit more rational, that plays out in really every aspect of our lives. So finding that balance a little bit more in terms of like, let's play a little more, work a little less, let's enjoy our lives while also still being accountable and proactive.
Yeah. Are there any practical strategies or things, activities people can do that will like make a difference in their health? Like, for example, one that I like from Ayurveda and maybe in traditional Chinese medicine also is to tongue scrape. Like, that's a really easy one that has lots of different benefits. But are there little things like that from TCM that we can do?
I would say more than anything, I would look for somebody who does Qigong or breath work through sort of Chinese medicine. I'll send you some YouTubes of some teachers that I like. I know there's a Dr. Lee who has like a 15-minute Qigong that's on YouTube, and he's wonderful. And then there's Fabrice. I'm going to butcher his last name, so I won't say it, but he does incredible breath work and Qigong. So I'll send you a couple of different YouTubes of people who are doing Qigong, Tai Chi, really just movement, eating with the seasons, eating seasonally. We really look at like the balance of the temperatures and the flavors again. So like if it's the middle of the winter, don't eat salads, eat some soup. You want something nice and warm. Chinese medicine is very instinctual in a lot of ways. It's sort of like follow what makes sense. So that's sort of how I look at it. But no, there are some fantastic practitioners who have lessons online that are free. And then one thing that I really like doing that not many people know about is this stuff called moxibustion. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have.
So moxa it's really more of a Japanese style of acupuncture. But so moxa is an herb called mugwort that's processed in a specific way. And what you can do is you can burn it on certain acupuncture points on top of the body. So there are different ways to do it. Sometimes we put it on top of needles. Obviously, you need an acupuncturist for that. But they also have these little stick-on ones that if you're very safe and careful and know what you're doing, you can buy them on Amazon, and you can find different acupuncture points. Like there's one of the major acupuncture points is stomach 36. So you can look up stomach 36. It is like on your shin, like a hand breadth down from your knee. And you'll see like once you start doing it, you'll see your finger just falls into a hole right there. But doing moxa there strengthens the immune system very powerfully. So that's something that you could do daily if you're interested, or even doing that on your belly for women who are having cramps, or if you're having any sort of digestive disharmony. There's stomach 26, Ren 12, Ren 6. Those would be the points that I would look up, but those are really easy ones. Moxa is amazing. I actually have a friend who's doing a research study using moxibustion to treat drug-resistant tuberculosis in Africa, and he is one of the most brilliant people and ambitious humans I've ever met, and it's just such a cool modality and something that's really versatile. So it's something that I highly recommend and love using myself.
It's really cool. It seems a bit scary to burn something on the skin and hope that you do it in the right place. For those of us that don't know the meridians, the acupuncture points, but I guess if you learn and you watch a good video and you figure it out, it can be a helpful tool.
It's easier than it sounds. So there's also, I'll send you a link also, there are these moxa boxes that you can put on your belly. And so it makes it probably a little safer. But if you're missing the acupuncture point, or if you're off by a little bit, it's not going to be a big deal. You're still tonifying that channel. And then B, with the sticky ones, what I would do is like, you'll see, so they're sticky on the bottom, and then they have like a little tube of moxa, and you burn it from the top. It takes a couple of minutes. So you can just use I normally just use my fingers, but you could get like some sort of like a metal crampy thingy or tweezers and just pull it off and put it in an ashtray. And you just pull it off once you start feeling it getting hot. You don't wait until it burns you, obviously. There are some schools of thought where they do that, but that's when you're working with a practitioner. That's very, very old school and not something I would recommend, obviously.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. And what you were saying earlier is also spot on, like following your grandma's wisdom, your grandpa's wisdom, and eating soup in the winters, salad when it's hot, a little hotter out and you need to cool your core temperature. It's like a lot of these things seem like they're just wives' tales or they don't actually have any basis. But a lot of the old systems actually mentioned this, and they mentioned how important it was. And now with supermarkets that ship stuff across the world, we get access to whatever we want to eat at any time. It's easy to lose track of seasonal eating and some of these other like seasonal habits.
Oh, totally. Think about it. So every single culture in the world traditionally has both a bone broth and a fermented food. So we've always known that the gut is the foundation of health because that's potentiating good bacteria in the gut, and that's helping heal the gut lining. So these traditional ideas are just so, so wise. You know, in China, when I studied in China, it was just the best to be out there and see all of them following all of our tips and tricks, which is like, you know, covering your neck if there's wind and whatnot. And yeah, do I know that, like, you know, in Chinese medicine, we call colds and flus sort of like wind invasions. So they're pathogenic factors that sort of come in on the wind. Is the wind actually carrying pathogenic factors? Unclear. It could be carrying viruses and flus and whatnot. I don't know. But I do know that 99 times out of 100, Chinese medicine seems to have it right. So I'm going to follow the recommendations of my teachers. And, you know, there's no harm in wearing a scarf and drinking my broth.
That's actually one thing I struggle to understand how to best approach is using like temperature therapies in the different seasons. Like I can see two schools of thought there where like, say in the summer, you'd want to use a sauna because then your body gets better at self-regulating from extreme heat. But also I can see how that's bringing you further out of balance because it's already hot outside and you're getting in a room that's 180 plus degrees.
Yeah, it's tricky. I haven't done too much of a deep dive on that. My friend Drew Pearson, who ran 40 Years of Zen, is a big proponent of ice baths for high performers. And it's something that I know I really want to I've done it a couple of times. I know I want to start doing it because it's something that I like resist so much that I'm like, there's got to be something to it if it seems like something I'll hate so much. But yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of that hormesis, like, you know, continually stressing your body so that it's able to recover better. But I do think that there's something like I've been doing a lot of like heated yoga recently. I kickbox and box with this app Fight Camp, which I recommend to every human. But I was like, all right, I should balance it out and do some yoga. So I've been doing this hot yoga and it just totally knocked me out this week. Like, I don't know if I just wasn't hydrated enough or if it just depleted my yin according to Chinese medicine. But I was just like zonked all week. And I was like, okay, like I need to follow my body. So I think, again, it's sort of that if you can take the time to slow down and really sort of be like, well, how am I actually feeling? Like, how am I responding to this? Like, does this end up being a net win or is this actually sort of running me down more? I think it's just really learning to listen to your body. People really don't know how to do that.
That's a good one. And we discussed a couple tools and tricks you can use, things you can pay attention to in terms of like your own bodily cues. But I'm still wondering, say, for example, with the cold plunge, feels good to me after I've done it year round. But I'm wondering, like, am I increasing the cold too much in my body by doing it longer in the winter, or should I do it shorter in the winter and longer in the summer? You know what your friend does there in terms of like adjusting the habit seasonally?
I don't know what Drew would recommend. I mean, instinctually, I would say yes. I would go shorter in the winter and longer in the summer. In Chinese medicine, the yin and the yang are sort of the foundation of everything, but really of the body. So the yin is sort of the female aspect of things. It's sort of fluids, whereas the yang is like the male. It's the energy, it's the heat, it's the fire. So like you need the balance of both. So in the winter, it's more of a yin time because it's colder. If you're going in cold plunges, you can, you know, the idea in Chinese medicine would be that you would deplete your yang. So yang, if you're seeing yang deficiency, you're going to see that in your energy. You're going to see that in your adrenals sort of wearing out. You're going to see that probably in your testosterone levels dropping. If you're noticing any of those things happening, or just generally feeling cold overall, say, maybe heat up that sauna a little bit more, or slow down the cold plunges, and just sort of follow your body for a little bit as you recover.
Yeah, intuitive enough. You mentioned to me yesterday, I don't know if you want to discuss this, that you were not feeling 100%. What did you do to recover from yesterday?
What did I do to recover? Well, I took AB9. We have this formula my friend Maria made. She's an integrative doctor down in Panama, and I met her while our sons were at that clinic in Ecuador. And so it's a colloidal silver formula that has MSM and cell salts in it. And so I don't really understand it completely. I do know that it's absolute magic. It's like my immune catch-all. I don't know if you've seen like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like they spray Windex on everything. It's like, you have a pimple, spray this on here. Like you have a sore throat, spray it on your throat. Like you've got a rash, spray it on there. Like it's one of those things that just works. My son's speech therapist yesterday was like, I haven't gotten rid of this sinus infection in 2 weeks. And I was like, put a nose spray cap on your AB9 and like, I can assure you it'll be gone in like 2 days. So I took a bunch of that and went to bed really early. I was going to do my sauna, but I didn't. But yeah, I just took AB9 and that helped. But it was also, I've just been run down from doing too much of the hot yoga. So I was like, then take a couple of days off of working out and just respect my body and what it's telling me, instead of just typical sort of maniac being like, I'm just going to push through it, which is something that I think we all do a little bit too much.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's easy to just listen to your body and say, I obviously need some downtime. You don't necessarily need to know current imbalance between yin and yang, or like the theoretical side. You can just like listen in to what your body's telling you it wants, maybe to sleep an extra hour or two, or maybe to miss the next yoga class, whatever it is.
Again, we ignore these symptoms. We ignore these like signs that our bodies are telling us things. I mean, even a fever is our body trying to tell us something. Like the fever is trying to fight off something. If you're tired, your body's telling you something, like, and I know that it's hard in this day and age where we have so many expectations and so many things pulling for our time and energy. And, there's a never ending to-do list for every single one of us. But, in the long run, by fighting against those instincts, by fighting against those signs, we're really just doing a disservice to ourselves and to our health long term. So the more that we can honor that and listen to what our body is telling us, the more that ultimately you're going to be feeling better and be able to be more productive and do the things that you want to do better and longer.
Yeah, I talk a lot about what I call bioharmony on this show and in the articles I've written. And it's the concept that you don't want to oppose everything that's going on in your body. You get a cough, you don't want to necessarily just suppress the cough. You get a fever, you don't want to bring the fever back down, because each of these functions serves a vital role. And yes, you might feel better, but you're hampering your body's ability to do what it needs to do to recover.
Definitely. And that's a concept that we use in Chinese medicine also, is you're really trying to. I remember one of my teachers would say, for like a cold or a flu, you treat the patient 90% of the way, and then you make sure that the body does the rest. We want to fully like clear through these pathogens instead of having these, what we call sort of hidden pathogens or latent pathogenic factors within the body, which we see a lot more these days, and potentially could be playing a role with with long COVID, are a lot of these latent viruses like Epstein-Barr or Lyme or whatnot that are sort of hidden within the body until your immune system's sort of weakened, and then they come out, and it's a whole thing. The more that you can allow your body to do what it's naturally meant to do. I mean, that's really what Chinese medicine is doing. We're sort of reminding the body how to move, how to flow, and how to work the way that it can when it's working optimally, and then it sort of kicks into gear a little bit better,
Yeah. All right, we'll shift gears a bit now, and I'm also interested in your approach, if there's a ancestral component to this or not, what you do for cognitive performance. You mentioned brain tap earlier. You hinted at neurofeedback previously.
Brain performance. I do a lot of things for the brain. I love my brain tap. I have a neurofeedback device. I'm trained as a neurofeedback practitioner. I love doing that. I think that that's incredibly profound. As somebody who played soccer and snowboarded my whole life, and who's fairly highly functioning overall, I would argue. Depends on the data. I was pretty shocked when I did neurofeedback for the first time and I took an evaluation and it was like, oh, you've got significant ADD and I've had multiple concussions. And I was like, that makes sense. Yeah, that checks out. But doing neurofeedback was really amazing in terms of helping me sort of calm my mind, steady my mind, help me focus more. It takes about 20 sessions, if not more, depending on what you're working with. But it was really helpful for me, especially for recovering from some concussions that I've had.
Will you explain at a high level what neurofeedback is?
So basically, our brains work in different brain waves and different brain wave activity. It works from different parts of your brain to others. So what we do is we sort of put different electrodes on different parts of your brain. We're able to help train your brain to use the appropriate brain waves and the appropriate patterns and the appropriate locations. So it's basically optimizing how your brain is communicating. And there are people who could explain it way, way better than me. But it's really pretty profound. And I've used it for all sorts of different things. Again, I should connect you with Drew. You'd love him. But he's brilliant at it and obviously started 40 years of Zen. So he's the master of disaster when it comes to neurofeedback. So I bow to him, but it is pretty profound. It's great for epilepsy. It's great for brain injuries. If you have insomnia, anxiety, I mean, it's really something that, like, instead of just taking a pill to optimize your brain, it's something that really helps support your brain function overall. And that's going to be a long-term shift for you and potentially change your entire life. And really fantastic if you can get children to do it early on to address any sort of challenges that they might have. So neurofeedback, definitely. In terms of, I'm trying to think of what supplements I take. So like before this podcast, I took my Flow State and my Immortal All-Stars.
I was about to ask you about Flow State because that's the first one of your products that I'm excited to try because we can all use a little more Flow State in our life.
Oh my God, I love that formula. So that formula is interesting. That formula, actually, Drew had been researching this formula, Xiaoyao-san, which is Free and Easy Wanderer. One of the most commonly prescribed Chinese herbal formulas in the world, but it's typically used to help support women's health, actually, and regulate women's cycles. But what he was seeing was that on the EEG, it was increasing blood flow to the brain more substantially than any of the other formulas he was using. So what we did was we added other herbs that move the blood and have been researched to increase BDNF. So that's what we have for Flow State. So it's fun because it not only helps regulate women's cycles, but it's actually really fantastic for acutely helping boost brain function. So I take that every day. Highly recommend it.
One thing I'm curious about that, I have resistance towards taking any hemp related product in the morning because I have an association with hemp and winding down and chill. And I guess prerequisite to enter the flow state is you can't be all wound up and on edge. But what's the science behind the flow state and how specifically the flow state formula helps get us into that?
Helps get us into flow state, you mean? Like into gamma? We have flow state with hemp and without hemp. So you can buy it with either. But hemp doesn't necessarily just chill you out. But hemp works to regulate, there are receptors for hemp on the vagus nerve. It activates the 5-HT1A pathway in the brain, which is the same pathway that SSRIs work on. It regulates so many different things in the brain that are going to help you sort of get into that more focused area. Again, it's more balancing it. So I look at hemp as more of an adaptogen in terms of like if it's nighttime and you want to chill out and like get ready for bed, hemp's going to be great for that. But also if you're ready to like work and like sit down and focus, that's still a different level of, cognitive function that hemp can help support. But yeah, so with flow state, it's really, the formula has been shown. So basically flow state in Chinese medicine, what it does is it regulates the liver. Chinese medicine, we talk about all the different organs in terms of their energetic actions. I'm not talking about the physiological actions of the organ that we talk about with Western medicine. So if I say that like somebody has liver qi stagnation, I'm not saying there's something physically wrong with their liver. I'm saying that the energetics of the liver are off. So it's a different system, but some people get really freaked out when we talk about like different organs. So in Chinese medicine, liver qi stagnation is kind of the most commonly diagnosed pattern of disharmony. So liver qi is in charge of the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. So we want everything flowing. When there's no flow of energy throughout the body, or if there's a blockage, then you're going to see some sort of symptoms, whether it's pain or stress. So the liver is sort of the general of the body. And then when you get stressed, the liver doesn't allow for the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. It can lead to sort of a lot of the symptoms that you'll see are sort of irritability, stress. Sometimes you'll see some heat rising. So that stereotypical like angry man yelling at somebody with a red face. You know, that's liver qi leading to heat rising, harassing the heart and the face. Flow state, what it does is it supports the liver and its ability to create the free flow of blood and qi throughout the body. And then it also helps support the spleen, which is in charge of digestion in Chinese medicine. And so really what it's doing, it's allowing the brain and the body to flow the way that it's supposed to. And then that was what was backed up on the scans that Drew was doing, showing that it was actually increasing the blood flow to the brain. And then we can't technically say that it's increasing BDNF, but yeah, the herbs that we added are herbs that have been researched to increase BDNF, which is brain-derived nootropic factor, which increases the amount of new neurons that you're creating and communicating with.
Yeah. And it seems like that would be a good one to stack with some coffee or something, because then you'd be getting some of the feel-good effects of the caffeine, plus the anandamide activation, the bliss molecule from getting some hemp.
Totally. Well, and what I do, with Immortal All-Stars, I was thinking I'll send you this one also. So Immortal All-Stars is like one of my favorites. That's why it's literally next to me on the couch. I look at it sort of as like an herbal multivitamin. Like it's got like reishi, astragalus, ginseng, goji berries, danshan. I know them all in Chinese, so I'm the worst. But it's got herbs to support like your qi, your blood, your immune system, helps with stress. It's like very adaptogenic. It has some herbs to support digestion. So this is like kind of my catch-all formula that I was like, let's just fucking throw the kitchen sink at them and like just have this one really super powerhouse formula. So I often pair that one with Flow State, and they do really, really well together. I like doing those, especially if I'm doing a podcast or something where I really want to be on cognitively.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And then you'll use your AC or AV9 for general issues that come up, acute issues.
Yeah, AV9 I use if I feel like I'm getting sick. I spray it in the back of my throat, underneath my tongue. Remy had a bee sting, or like if I'm just trying to boost my immune system, if I'm around sick people or something. Remy had a bee sting, and normally when he gets bee stings, it'll lead to like a week's worth of seizures. I mean, like 10 seizures a day for 7 days. And so I didn't realize he had gotten the bee sting, and I was putting him to bed, and his ankle was like totally swollen, and I was like, oh dear, like, what do I do? I was like, no, like, this is not no week is a good week for seizures. It's like my own personal hell, but I was like, what do I do? So I was like, all right, let's give it a go. So I got AV9. I was like, I'm just going to spray this on the bee sting every half an hour for the next 3 hours until I go to bed, and like cross my fingers and see how the night goes. And that's what I did. And I woke up in the morning, all of the swelling was gone. He didn't have any seizures, and like it was mind-blowing to me. So it just dramatically reduces inflammation. I also use it for Remy for like kids get molluscum, which are these weird viral warts that kids can pick up from like pools and stuff like that. So that's when I first used it, was he had gotten molluscum in Ecuador. And so I sprayed it on his knee, and it was gone in like 24 hours. And this is something I've treated with Chinese herbs before, and it can be really difficult to treat. So I was just totally blown away. So it's really an honor that Maria shared the formula with us so that we can help get it out to more people. But I love AV9. It's definitely something that I always have in my bag.
Yeah, I love it. You have so many different unique products. It's hard to choose which ones to start with.
Yeah, no, there's really no end to what we can create with Chinese herbs. It's just sort of figuring out how to make it safe and effective for people to take off of the shelf, like, with the current or past or whatever you want to call it, cold and flu that's been going around. Chinese herbal medicine, we've been treating pathogenic factors out of China for a couple thousand years. We're very good at it. We have 40 classical cold and flu formulas. So we really hone in on the pattern, what's going on. So as we saw with COVID, there were so many different presentations. Me getting a cold and you getting the same cold, we're going to have very different presentations. So we don't often do one size fits all formulas like that. And so I was debating whether or not to put out a line of cold and flu formulas, but I was like, it's more responsible for people to go to a practitioner and get the right formula. So I'm always playing with how can we get the most effective stuff out there and make it as accessible to people as possible? But also I want to make sure that I'm doing the due respect to the medicine that I'm so grateful to be able to practice and not, put anybody in harm's way in any way,
Yeah, that's one of the paradoxes of all this, is that you want to customize it to each person, yet you also want to enable the most people possible, which is difficult to do both at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's why I have multiple businesses.
Yeah. Well, Chloe, we can keep going for a long time, and maybe we'll do a follow-up after this at some point to discuss some of the ways you can customize herbal formulas, more around the adaptogens and other products we didn't even touch on at all today. Physical performance, there's so many different avenues we can go, but let's start to wind this one down. And if people are interested in trying some of your products or connecting with you, how do they go about finding you?
So they can check out RadicalRootsHerbs.com. And I do believe we're doing a coupon code URBAN for 15% off if anybody wants to try anything. You can reach me at Chloe@RadicalRootsHerbs.com. I am about to start seeing patients again for custom Chinese herbal formulas online. My new business for that is called Hidden Root Society. So you can check that out at hiddenrootsociety.com. But we're having some fun credit card processor stuff. So if you want to sign up, you can just shoot me an email at Chloe@Radical, and I would love to work with you. But you have to take your herbs in order for them to work. If you don't take your herbs, they don't work. It's not going to happen through osmosis. So please don't waste your money if you're not going to take them. I really do believe in the power of Chinese herbs. I've seen remarkable transformations, and I'd love to work with you and be honored if you try our herbs. It really means the world to me, and it's such a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for setting up that code. I'm sure people will take you up on it, and they would be in good hands if they get the opportunity to work with you directly. Now let's go on to a final question before a quick rapid fire round, and then we'll let you get back to your day.
All right, let's do it.
If there was a worldwide burning of the books and you got to save the works of 3 teachers, who would you choose and why?
Who would I choose? Lao Tzu, the Tao. I don't think that there's any more concise way of explaining the universe. Coming to mind is Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief. The further I get, the more I do believe that this world and this life is what we make of it. Choose your thoughts wisely, as well as your friends. And then number 3, another interesting one coming to mind is Stephanie Seneff. I just so admire her work and her tenacity around glyphosate and working to try and create a healthier world, not only for us, but for the environment and for all of the world's inhabitants, and just think that she is a force to be reckoned with and somebody that I greatly, greatly admire.
Yeah, the world of science needs people like her that are willing to go out, expose what no one else wants to expose, put themselves in the line, and do great work.
Yeah, she's just truly incredible. It's amazing and mind-boggling to see some of the research she comes out with. I mean, it's terrifying and wonderful all rolled up into one.
Yeah. All right, we'll do a quick rapid fire round now. And the first question is, what is one thing you're researching these days?
Autoimmune disorders and their correlation to hemp and the endocannabinoid system.
Ah, very interesting. Because hemp acts as like an immunomodulator. If your immune system is overactive, it'll quiet it down. If it's underactive, it'll bring it up.
Exactly. Yep. It's amazing. So yeah, I'm working on doing a presentation on that for practitioners. So
nice. Okay, what's one thing that the Radical Roots tribe does not know about you?
That I don't know what the hell I'm doing when it comes to running a business, and I'm trying, but I'm a very good doctor, and I consider myself a fairly exceptional mom. Running a business is a whole different beast, and I love it, but sometimes I'm a little sloppy at it. So I appreciate anybody who's worked with us and has been very patient with me as I'm learning how to grow and scale a business.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. There's so many different skill sets, mastering them one at a time. And I love what you're doing at Radical Roots.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing my best. That I will say.
Well, is there any parting wisdom you'd like to impart on listeners?
Really, what I love to tell people is, it sounds sort of silly, but something is better than nothing. You know, again, just bringing it back to the middle way. We really all get so caught up in these big, dramatic, sort of more sexy changes that we can make to our entire life and lifestyle. But truly, you know, like I'm a single mom to a child with multiple disabilities. I have 3 businesses. And I can say with all sincerity that I get happier and healthier every day. Some days maybe a little sloppier than others, but like it really is about those small changes that you can make and just keep focused on moving forward, you know, imperfectly in the directions of your dreams. And like before long, you'll see how much change you're actually able to make. But it's really those little steps that get you there.
Well, Chloe Weber, thank you for joining me on the show. And what a great way to start the new year.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You as well. And thank you to all of you out there for sharing your time, your energy, and your attention with us. And until next time, take care and have a great week. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.